and welcome to Springwatch 2022. This is the season where we hopefully see more of the sun, the days get longer and the wildlife gets more active. It's the perfect time to get out and about to enjoy the best of British wildlife, which is exactly what our camera teams have been doing. They've been out and about filming people who are passionate about wildlife on their doorsteps. People like Dowie Roberts, otherwise known as Riverman, who's passionate about snorkeling Welsh rivers. We also join Jack Badams and Indy Green, volunteers who are trying to map out the breeding grounds of the lesser spotted woodpecker. Megan McCubbin goes to a secret location to see if she can spot the greater horseshoe bat. But first, let's start with Nathan Small, who was a fashion photographer but has more recently swapped models for something a little bit wilder. Greenbank Cemetery in Bristol. Not the obvious place for a day out. But for macro specialist Nathan Small, it's perfect.
It's very meditative because you're out there in the morning on your own, concentrating. You're not thinking about anything else. You're just looking out for tiny, tiny little things. It's such a good place to look for insects because there's a real variety of habitats here. What I'm doing is just walking very, very slowly and very calmly, like I've lost my keys or something. I'm looking out for if there's any movement. Aha. So yeah, there's something perched on this gravestone here. What I'm doing is I set my focus on the lens before, get nice and steady, leaning on something if possible, and then I gradually drift forwards until it hits focus and then go for it. The great thing about macro photography is that you don't really have to travel far at all to find really interesting things. There's actually all this amazing wildlife, sounds like a cliche, but right under your feet. As soon as you put a macro lens on them and get up close, there's built-in revelation. Suddenly you realise that these everyday creatures have got all these amazing adaptations and body parts. You can see all the individual hairs and even the holters, which are the little wing appendages which flyers use as gyroscopes to sort of stabilise in the air. Some of them look like little robots. You can see all the details in their eyes. That's what I get a kick out of, I guess.
Nathan has turned his passion into a career, but invertebrates weren't always the focus of his attention.
I actually used to work in advertising and commercial photography before, selling drinks, well-known fashion brands. I've always wanted to work in wildlife. I just had an epiphany one day where I just thought, if I don't do the thing that I really want to do now, like the longer I leave it, the harder it's going to get. So like I just have to be brave and just do it now.
Nathan has built his own studio at home, with miniatures instead of models taking centre stage.
I stayed quite loyal to my style, I think. Quite stylised and moody and playing with shadows and contrast. A lot of the lighting and things that I'm using are the same tricks and lighting designs that I was using for advertising and for fashion and that you would use just with a model. It's all kind of the same stuff, but just shrunk down. No one breathe. Gone. Whew. So you don't get long. I know it's not the answer everyone wants, but the bugs are harder to work with than models.
All his subjects are returned to where they were found to be released. Eventually. Nathan is keen to pass on his passion to his daughter Anouk.
Ooh.
Can I hold him?
She's on it. She loves it.
The little spider.
She's absolutely obsessed. Oh, wow.
I like spiders.
I'm going to take a picture of him. We can look on our book and try and see which one he was. Yeah, and then we'll look on your pamphlet and see if he's on there, yeah? My granddad brought me to the woods and we would look for woodpeckers together and he would teach me various things. Then my granddad in Barbados was also very into wildlife and he would turn up at our hotel when we'd go and see family out there. And he'd have bought like a massive crab that he'd found on the way. Oh, he chooses. I really want to just pass that on to her. We need the next generation to take an interest in stuff, especially insects. Like, they're in big trouble at the moment. The more you notice, the more you can get into that world. And it feels like a really privileged thing to be able to see. But actually, all of these things are available for any of us if you just like slow down and take the time to have a look.
This part of the River Wye is very special to me. I'm literally in my element.
I've had a few funny looks over the years. A few people sort of take steps backwards and think, oh my word, what's going on here?
Snorkeling gives me an insight into this magical underwater world.
When you go under the water, you do see a lot more than a lot of people think. I have a massive passion for rivers. As far back as I can remember as a child growing up, I just remember going into river, wellies and so on. I just love being in them, the sounds of them, the way they move, the wildlife associated with them. I explore rivers all year round, and spring is obviously a very exciting time because life is just bursting. You see mayflies coming out of the water. You'll see them laying eggs. The classic view of a mayfly is that they only live for a day. It's not true, because most of their lives they spend underwater as larvae. Mayflies have been around for millions of years. They are some of the oldest insects on the planet. It's a lovely thought as well, isn't it, that these creatures have been around and landing on dinosaurs. You look at fossils of most groups of insects that are in fresh water, and they've hardly changed, which just shows you how perfectly adapted they are to life in running water. Another group I've been filming recently, and something again I'm in awe of, something called the non-biting midges. Not well known, it's fair to say, but they are here in their thousands. There's 500 and more species in Britain alone of these non-biting midges. Tanitarsis, their particular group are called, build tubes out of silk and little bits of sediment. And they have capture nets at the top. Bits will drift down along with the current and then get snagged in this gluey kind of silk at the top. They'll then come out of the tube and collect it. They're unsung heroes, creatures like that. Dippers will eat them, fish such as trout and so on depend on them. It adds to the rich complexity and beauty of the web of life in rivers. Somebody said to me recently I should have been born with fins. I suppose I could call myself semi-aquatic. I'd like to be fully aquatic. One of the most remarkable groups of creatures I see are caddisflies. Lots of the ones you see in rivers are the ones that build cases, as some build cases out of stones, plant material. These little tiny creatures, no longer than your fingernail, they have protection. And I think, oh yeah, I could have that, because I suffer with mental health now and again. If I'm struggling with something, and I have had a few issues, if I'm honest, over the years, sometimes I imagine myself as a caddis, having some kind of protection against day-to-day things. In terms of well-being, I feel completely content every time I'm by a river. Even though I'm out every day for hours, quite often I'm seeing something and I literally haven't seen it before. And that's something pretty special.
The frost still clings to the ground in Sherwood Forest. But it isn't just the warming sun that spring brings to the woodland. This sound is the signal for RSPB volunteers Indy Green and Jack Badams to start their mission for the day.
We're out here looking for the brilliant lesser-spotted woodpecker. Lesser-spotted woodpeckers are a really, really rare bird species, and they are really declining across the UK, but we have a relatively stable population in Sherwood Forest.
With numbers falling nationally by up to 80% in recent years, places like Sherwood Forest have become a lifeline for these elusive birds. But they're not easy to find.
The lesser-spotted woodpecker is the tiny bird with the titanic territory. One lesser-spotted woodpecker pair can have a territory that within it could host up to 500 blue tits. They're such incredibly secretive birds. For most of the year, they just melt into the forest. They're a tiny little sparrow-sized bird, and you only get this really brief period of activity where they go from being massively introverted to hugely extroverted, and they start drumming and they start displaying and they're setting up their territories, but it only lasts from maybe end of February through to mid-March.
Jack and Indy are trying to map their territories, but they only have 2 weeks to get what they need before the birds stop drumming, settle down to nest, and new leaves on the trees render them almost invisible. So they split up, allowing them to track the woodpecker's movements.
Anything down your end yet?
Yeah, I'm just going to walk up a little bit further. I'm nearly at the top of the track.
And whilst their communication may be electronic, the old methods prove best for listening for drumming.
Look a bit daft doing this, but it does help. Just there. That's lesser spot, yeah. They look for generally dead branches because they echo really well. We've got it drumming at the top of a birch tree.
Have you still got it?
Yeah, I've got it. It's right above the path, yeah. Right underneath it now. Just the one female now taken off and flying straight down the length of the path towards you.
So we've just got a drumming on the top of a dead ancient oak tree. Oh, that's brilliant. You can hear a drumming so loud. I'm just going to listen to that sound.
The woodpecker's drumming is their version of a song. They're advertising their territory and presence to potential mates and rivals.
They and she's just found a different piece of wood. They get different pieces of wood and they find out which one projects their drum the most. That's awesome. She's just flown off towards you, so keep an eye out.
The short courtship season provides a crucial insight into the woodpeckers' lives.
Just last week, we had 2 females fighting over a single male.
Yeah.
Doing stuff that I'd never seen them do before. They had their tail feathers out, they were posturing.
Wings out.
They had their wings out, they were shouting like parrots. It was unbelievable. They were making themselves look so big. And all the time, when these 2 females were bickering, the male was just about 10 metres away, doing his own thing, and these 2 females were just like that, and like shouting and screaming and chasing each other.
I've never seen anything like that.
It's the best, my best ever nature experience, that was.
By 10 a.m, Jack and Indy are ready to mark up their map.
So we definitely had a few confirmed sightings
Definitely,
from where
yeah.
you were straight over to me.
Yeah.
Pretty active today, although just the one this time.
It was just the one, wasn't it?
Just a
It was
female.
interesting.
But interesting that last week we had the pair and an extra female probably fighting and going at it.
And that was there, yeah.
But now the pair seem to have gone quiet and we just have this one female.
So it seems like the pair have like properly settled down now, and now this one female is still going from all these different places, just continuously drumming and just desperate to find any other mate that she can get.
The data gathered today will be used to narrow down the search for nests built by successful pairs later in the season.
We can't hope to protect anything without understanding it as intimately as we possibly can. So collecting this data is helping us work out how those birds are behaving in what we think is a pretty good, strong habitat, so that we can then protect them for the future.
I've travelled to a secret location in West Sussex to investigate the world of some of our most elusive mammals, bats. There are 18 recorded resident species of bat in the UK, with 17 of these being breeding populations. There are some facing severe declines, but others seem to be on the increase with range expansion, including one I'm hoping to find today. I'm meeting with ecologist Nick Gray, who has been surveying the bats here for a number of years. So why have we come to this site specifically today? Why is it so important?
Well, this is a former disused railway tunnel, and it's one of a set in this locality. And collectively, they probably represent one of the most significant bat roosts in the country. This is particularly important for the greater horseshoe bat, which we've always had 1 or 2, but then within the last 3 or 4 years, those numbers have increased.
That's brilliant. And is it kind of a recovery thing? Is there a reason why those numbers are going up?
Locally, we have discovered another site which is a maternity site for those bats, which is particularly exciting because it's the first time we've had breeding greater horseshoe bats in the southeast of England for over 100 years.
It's early spring, so they won't be in the maternity roost yet. But Nick is taking me to one of the disused railway tunnels which the bats are visiting. We've obtained special licenses to be able to enter, so it's face masks on to protect the bats. And a switch to infrared to minimise any possible disturbance. Red light on?
Red light's on.
Let's head in.
These boards were hung in here to provide extra features for the bats to use.
How you're supposed to look at these?
Well, Everyone has their own technique.
Do they?
That's not one I think I've seen before.
Is it not?
But there are other ways. Or the easier way is to take a mirror and have a look there. So if you shine the light into the mirror, you can project it up behind it.
Well, that makes a lot more sense. I feel a bit silly now. It's doing some sort of exorcist yoga. Trying to find these bats. They're much easier. Although, sadly, no bats under this one. Let's continue on. Greater horseshoe bats are some of the largest bats we have in the UK, with this characteristic nose that gives them their name. Traditionally known as cave dwellers, the tunnels here provide the perfect roosting conditions for them as they expand their range from the southwest. It's quite surreal to be kind of out of your element in the pitch black, but looking for an animal that's entirely in theirs, and there's something quite nice about that.
I just found a greater horseshoe bat.
Oh, have you?
Just one, but it's quite important that we talk quietly. We don't want to disturb it.
Of course.
So if you just glance up with the red light, you can see it just in the fold.
It's gorgeous.
What they look like is that when people ask me to describe them, they look like a small pear.
Yes, they do, actually.
And in fact, there's another species, the lesser horseshoe, is a slightly smaller one, and that looks like a plum.
A plum and a pear.
Yeah.
I like that. Nick believes that some of the bats here were born at a nearby maternity roost, making them some of the very first West Sussex greater horseshoe bats in around a century. It's incredibly exciting to think that they could be amongst the first bats to be born in the county.
They're such amazing bats, but they're very easily disturbed, so I think we'll withdraw now.
Sure. Can't see with my mask on, but I've got a really big smile on my face. Wow, what an amazing find.
Welcome to Springwatch 2022. This is my favourite time of the year. It's full of colour and new beginnings, full of hope and optimism. And we could certainly all do with a little bit of that. In fact, we could all do with occasionally just stopping and breathing in a lungful of nature. And that's exactly what we're going to let you do right now. So sit back, relax, take a deep breath and enjoy the sights and sounds of the very best of British wildlife at this, the most beautiful time of the year.